That's someone I know? Wendy repeated to Olivia, stunned that the swollen face of the boy that was so disfigured by its injuries should be familiar to her. Whoever the poor soul was in the back seat of the car with her, she pitied him. Olivia nodded solemnly. Wendy peered closer, trying to suppress her horror, revulsion, and the urge to burst into tears so she could figure out who this was. Those tightly shut eyes and the recognizable parts of their facial features did ring a bell in the back of her mind. Wendy gasped, drawing in a sharp breath of icy air. Wendy's eyes widened and she shook her head violently. No, it can't be him. It can't be Steve's little brother, Robbie. Olivia looked at Steve in the rearview mirror. Steve had passed out in his seat, his head rolled to the side. Olivia, seeing Steve and his poor elementary school-age brother looking this way, couldn't find any words to say. Wendy started to hyperventilate and then forced herself to get a hold of her breathing, slowing it down. Olivia, does that mean? Wendy's lower lip started to quiver as she pointed a trembling finger at Steve. Is that Steve? Olivia nodded, clearing her throat, fighting emotion. Yes, it is. She wanted to stay in control until they had gotten everyone to safety. Wendy's hands could not stop trembling. Wendy stretched out her hand to Robbie, waiting to set it on his shoulder, but she stopped and turned away. Her body felt like it was rejecting this reality. She was so angry and confused and sick that she was looking at the sweet little boy she knew. She didn't know if she was strong enough to actually touch Robbie. That would make this whole situation real. Wendy's eyes fell on Steve, but seeing the mottled bloodstain on the shirt was no comfort. It made her head hurt. She couldn't stand that he had been through so much. Olivia spoke, breaking the silence. Wendy, we need to stay in your family's home here until they've recovered and we're all safe. We just need a place to hide. Everything about it needs to be kept secret. Olivia glanced at their driver when she said this, who was as stoic and expressionless as a mannequin. Wendy saw Olivia look at the driver and knew immediately what she must be thinking. Olivia, Marcus has been trusted by my family for years. You don't have to worry about him. Marcus was pleased to hear this, but hid any trace of reaction. He knew that discretion was important to keeping this job. He also knew how to explain that she could trust him. I don't look at things I shouldn't look at. I don't listen to things I shouldn't hear. I don't say things I shouldn't say, he said, his eyes still on the road in front of him. Olivia nodded and turned back to Wendy, leaning her head back against the leather headrest. Chris has people who can come to your house to treat them later. We arranged for it to happen as soon as we could. Wendy watched Robbie's little chest rise and fall. She spoke in a soft voice. How bad are their injuries? Bad, Wendy. Olivia closed her eyes. Wendy felt like she'd asked a stupid question and felt angry with herself. It was obvious that Steve and Robbie were in a desperate condition. She lowered her head, ashamed that she couldn't be as businesslike and in control as Olivia in this crazy situation. She tried to figure out why she even asked that question, and realized she was hoping to hear that they weren't as bad as they looked. But of course, that was not the case. The car fell into silence. The air was heavy and tense. Wendy tilted her head to get a better look at Robbie's face as he lay next to her. She wished she could reach out and comfort him, but she was also afraid that touching him would hurt him. She could only look on helplessly. It was a minute comfort to her that at least Robbie and Steve were both unconscious. She hoped they were not feeling pain and that Olivia would be able to help them get better soon. Olivia called Marcus. At the next intersection, turn off and stop for 5 minutes. Marcus nodded. He glanced at the rearview mirror. A black sedan without its headlights on was trailing them from a short distance. He announced in a calm voice, "There's a car following us." Wendy gasped and whirled around to look. She had not noticed this. Olivia nodded, stoic. "Let them follow us." "Yes, miss." Marcus stopped at the next intersection and parked the car. They waited in tense silence. Wendy felt tempted to scream or throw up. She hoped they weren't losing time to help Steve or Robbie. The group waited in tense silence for 5 minutes, and Marcus started the car again. Olivia instructed him, "Let's head to the Chang's home now." "Yes, miss." Wendy turned to scan the empty road behind them. The same car pulled up from the side of the road and caught up to them again, maintaining the same distance away. Wendy's neck prickled. This was so creepy. Who was following them? She looked in alarm at Olivia and Marcus, wondering if she should say anything. But she saw Marcus look in his rearview mirror. He was keeping an eye on the car, so she figured she could trust him to do what needed to be done. They finally made it to the Chang's London home and drove into the courtyard. The car that had followed them the entire way stopped about 100 yards from the gates and parked, shutting off its engine. Olivia watched the other vehicle from where her car was parked in Chang's courtyard. After 3 minutes, the mystery car turned back on without turning on its headlights and made a U-turn, going back the way they came. As soon as the car tailing them disappeared from view, Olivia gave instructions in a low voice. "Wendy, can you carry Robbie in?" Wendy gulped. She knew she would have to figure it out. She nodded. Olivia gave her an encouraging look. "You've got this." Wendy gave a small, grateful smile. Olivia then turned to their driver. "Marcus, the two of us can carry Steve together." Marcus nodded to Olivia. As the two of them stood before Steve's unconscious body, Marcus felt his legs tremble and was surprised. He had seen many horrific things in his career as a discreet driver to the ultra-wealthy, but he was still in awe that this person was injured so badly. What had happened, he wondered, and why did it happen to someone who was still a kid? Wendy was able to carry Robbie with less difficulty than she thought she would. She briefly wondered if it was some sort of protective crisis strength, like moms who can lift cars off their trapped children. Then she realized, with her hands holding up his legs against her, that Robbie was skinnier than she remembered. She barely stifled a sob at the realization that they must have starved him. He was still in elementary school. "I have to hold it together until they're safe inside, then I can cry," she reasoned with herself. She carried Robbie through the dark halls of her family's home. She definitely wanted to do whatever she could to protect Robbie, and she had already failed him so badly. Wendy found the nearest guest room and let Robbie down as gently as she could onto the twin bed. Olivia and Marcus appeared in the doorway carrying Steve. "Where can we put him?" Olivia asked, breathing hard. "There's another bed," Wendy said, pointing to another twin. This room was commonly used for children. Olivia and Marcus carried Steve carefully in that direction. Marcus's forehead was covered in sweat. They gently placed Steve onto the bed. Steve inhaled sharply like he'd been hurt from being put on the bed, and raised his head slightly as he shut his eyes tighter. Seeing this, Wendy covered her mouth. She hadn't really been able to see Steve's face in the car, and looking at it now, especially since he was in extra pain, the tears she had been trying to save for a better moment started to flow from her eyes and roll down her face. Steve had always been so confident and cheerful. He was always smiling broadly, often up to some mischief. And she found him so handsome through all of his moods. She thought she had seen his face in every possible configuration before this, but she never imagined she would see him look the way he did at that moment. "Wendy, can you find 2 sets of clothes they can wear?" Olivia asked, taking off her coat. "Okay." Wendy nodded and stood, trembling. She gritted her teeth at herself, annoyed at the physical reactions betraying her intense distress. She loudly hit her thigh on a sharp bedside table corner, mad at herself. Now was not the time to have a hard time moving. She left the room. Olivia turned coolly to the driver once again. "Marcus, go and get a basin of hot water and a basin of cold water." She knew that both Steve and Robbie urgently needed medical attention. "And please turn the heat on in here." "Yes, miss." Marcus nodded and did as she asked, leaving the room. Wendy, looking uncertain, left the room for a moment to gather herself. Olivia extended the back of her hand to feel Steve's forehead. It was a little hot. On the other bed, Robbie groaned and murmured something incoherent in his pain. "Robbie?" Olivia hurried over to Robbie, feeling his forehead and cheek as well. They seemed hotter than Steve's. Marcus entered with a bucket of cold water and a towel. He left them with Olivia. Olivia soaked the towel in cold water. She wrung it out and gently pressed it to Robbie's forehead, face, and neck, trying to cool his body and prevent the fever from getting dangerously high. Marcus entered carrying a bucket of hot water that steamed in the chilly room. "Marcus, please bring a large cup of water and stir some salt into it." Marcus wordlessly left the room once more. Olivia was grateful that he was such an efficient assistant. Wendy entered as he left, carrying clothes. Before she spoke, she watched Olivia attend to Robbie for a brief moment, amazed. She knew Olivia was incredible, but seeing her handle this situation as such an adult filled her with awe for her friend. Wendy stepped in through the doorway. I found stuff for each of them that should fit loosely. Great, Olivia said, still wanting to be encouraging to Wendy. She knew that this was difficult for her. Change Steve's clothes and put the new ones on him. Be very careful and use a towel soaked in hot water to gently clean the edges of his wound. What? Wendy wasn't expecting to have to do this. Not for Steve. I can't do it. She didn't feel confident that she could do what Olivia asked and would be so angry with herself if she hurt Steve further. You can, and you have to, Olivia said, gentle but firm. He needs this and nobody else can do it right now. It has to be you. Olivia began removing Robbie's own blood-stained shirt to replace it, trying to move him as little as possible. She frowned at the marks on his skin and wondered sorrowfully how somebody could do such a vicious thing to a young child. It was horrific. Wendy took a deep breath, steeling herself. There wasn't time for her to panic. Steve needed her. Wendy walked to Steve's bedside and bent down. Her fingers were trembling as she began to unbutton his shirt. Her heart almost jumped out of her throat. She didn't know where to look. Then one determined thought pierced through the swirl of upsetting details in Wendy's mind, clear and strong as a bell. Steve Shook will not die. I won't let him. Wendy struggled to fight her shaking hands through the horrific task of unbuttoning Steve's blood-stained shirt. His poor face, she thought desperately. It's so beautiful. She had loved this face for such a long time, and doing this right now with him, and seeing him like this felt truly surreal. She undid the last button, feeling relief at being through this part of the task. She lifted one side of the shirt to try to gently remove it, but found that the blood-stained part was stuck to his skin. Her lifting of the shirt caused Steve to wince and softly say, "Ah," in pain. She had opened his wound slightly by moving his shirt, causing bright, fresh blood to bloom out onto the fabric. Wendy covered her mouth with her hands, devastated that she hurt Steve. I'm sorry, she whispered. She looked to Olivia, who did not look back up at her, and realized she had to continue doing this anyway. Wendy continued removing his shirt with even more care and started muttering to him, tears rolling down her face. It will just be one moment longer, that's all, just a moment. I'm so sorry. You must be in so much pain. I'm so sorry, Steve. Her voice was trembling as hard as the rest of her as she carried out what she knew she had to do. The worst part was trying to remove the shirt without causing any additional pain to his broken bones, swollen, and at unnatural angles in his arm. Steve's teeth were gritted tight, but he sucked air in sharply and his body twisted at the pain. Wendy had a hard time seeing through blurry tears. She did not know that to Steve in his moment of semi-consciousness, the sight and sound of Wendy, even though she was crying, was supremely comforting. He needed to hear the sound of her voice more than she knew. He knew she was taking care of him, and he trusted that she was doing her best. But Wendy was still mumbling sorry because she did not know Steve's thoughts. She kept berating herself for her clumsiness, wishing that one of her brilliant, graceful friends was doing this instead. If Olivia or Millie were taking care of Steve right now, he would not be in so much pain, she thought despondently. But right now, all he had was her, and all she had was herself. She had to make it work. Determination focused her nervousness and anxiety. She finally finished removing Steve's shirt from his wounded body, casting the ruined garment aside on the floor. Breathing hard and overwhelmed at the sight of him so injured, she stopped to catch her breath. Olivia glanced over at her. Okay, good work, she said, trying to sound encouraging, but her voice betrayed the fact that she was actually urging Wendy to work faster. You need to take off his pants too. Wendy was stunned, and her face turned red as she was shocked for a new reason. She would be removing Steve's pants? Okay, his pants, got it. Wendy sputtered. Olivia felt a twinge of impatience for Wendy's pearl clutching about modesty in such a time of need. This is about medical attention and it's urgent. You can't hesitate. Steve needs you and he would understand. He has a wound in his right leg that looks like it's a stab wound from a knife. Be careful. Wendy gulped. Marcus returned with the large cup of salt water as Olivia had instructed him to do. Does this work? Marcus asked about the water. Yes, thank you. Olivia gave a curt nod as she took the cup. Marcus, can you help Wendy? Wendy let out a huge sigh of relief at those words, her body releasing tense muscles. She felt like she had failed Olivia, but she didn't have any energy left to care. Wendy stepped aside for Marcus. His right leg has a knife wound. You have to be careful. Wendy instructed, then lowered her voice. He's really important to me, and I think I hurt him more. Marcus, please. Marcus got to work, but shot Wendy a kind look. You are handling this as best as anybody could, Miss Chang. Wendy felt so grateful to hear those words. Marcus gingerly yet quickly removed Steve's pants, and picking up on Wendy's discomfort, used a spare towel to lay across Steve's waist. Thank you so much, Marcus, Wendy said. She felt a renewed urge to help, and to prove that she was helping Marcus and Olivia. I can do the rest. Wendy soaked and wrung out a towel in the hot water bucket. She delicately dabbed away the dried blood from Steve's skin in the places where it looked safe to apply tiny amounts of pressure. Marcus, can you help me? Olivia called to him. Could you lift and support Robbie while I pour water on him and wipe his back? Marcus nodded, heading over to Olivia to help, positioning himself immediately in the best possible spot to lift and support Robbie's small body where Olivia could work. Wendy whispered to Steve as she cleaned his wounds, still shaking. I won't let you die, Steve. She noticed that the wound in his leg was near where she'd heard arteries were. It had certainly bled a lot, a scary amount. She swallowed, looking away from it. I will definitely not allow you to die. You can't. Wendy thought she saw a small smile appear on Steve's lips, though his eyes were closed. A laugh escaped Wendy through her horror. That's it, she encouraged him, feeling like he was listening to her. If he could understand her, there were so many things she wanted him to hear. You're so strong. They didn't kill you this time. You won't die so easily. You'll never allow anything from your family to fall into the hands of an outsider. And once you're better, we'll get back at those monsters who did this to you, I promise. Robbie groaned, starting to talk in his unconscious state with his eyes closed. Stevie, don't worry about me. Run. Don't worry about me. They will kill you, Stevie. They will beat you until you're dead, Stevie. Robbie sounded like he was about to cry, and his brows on his swollen face were tightly furrowed. He grabbed Olivia's arm tightly with both hands. Kill me if you need to kill someone. Just kill me, but let my brother go, Stevie. Olivia's unflappable exterior cracked open at these words, and her face filled with emotion. It was unthinkable what this poor boy had been through. She gently hugged Robbie, hoping that he was aware on some level of what she was doing and that he felt comforted. Olivia spoke, trying to soothe him. It's okay, Robbie. You already escaped. You and Steve both got away. It's all over. You're safe. You're safe. At these words, Robbie did relax his body and face and drifted off into unconsciousness again. Olivia released him, trying to shake off the emotion she was currently overwhelmed by. She knew she still had to continue more work on his wounds. With the cold, hot, and salt water, the three of them were able to cool off Steve and Robbie's feverish bodies and clean their wounds. They put Wendy's clean, soft clothes on each of the boys and covered them loosely with a blanket. She folded 2 cold, wet towels and put them on each of the boys' foreheads. Having done what they could for the time being, Olivia let out a long breath. She felt like she had been holding it for more hours. Is there anything else you want me to do for you all? Marcus asked. Not for now, Olivia replied gratefully. She was incredibly impressed with Marcus. His professionalism, calm demeanor, and bottomless stamina for this tedious, difficult work were exactly what she needed at that moment. He nodded in response. Olivia noticed that Wendy was just sitting frozen on Steve's bed next to him, staring at his face. Olivia gently approached her friend. "Wendy, you've done all you can for now." "Olivia?" Wendy said as she looked up with tearful eyes. "I don't want him to die." "I know," Olivia said softly. "I know. I will not let him die." "What should I do?" Wendy said, suddenly choking on a sob. "Don't panic," Olivia said, pulling Wendy toward her into a hug. "You've already done so well. You helped him so much. He's going to be—" Olivia was about to say that Steve was going to be okay, but she realized she did not know that, and she was just trying to protect Wendy's feelings. There had been times in the past when she had protected Wendy too well, and in the long run, this wasn't really doing Wendy any good. "We're going to have more answers when Chris's doctor is able to make it here in a little while." Wendy nodded and pulled back from Olivia's hug. "Yes, you're right. Thank you so much, Olivia." Olivia knew this was difficult, but she felt proud of Wendy. Wendy kissed the tips of her fingers and lightly touched them to a rare, unblemished spot on his face. Olivia's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, her face filling with relief. She turned to Marcus. "There's a doctor named Brent outside, Marcus. Please let him in and bring him back to us. And I know you would already, but please note whether you see anybody else watching the house out there." "Yes, miss." Marcus strode out of the room and fetched Brent. Once they had a doctor in their midst, things felt a lot simpler and less terrifying. He entered the room with authority, laden with multiple bags of medical supplies and tools. He had stabilized and set Steve's broken bones. He sutured the bigger wounds. He instructed Wendy to apply antiseptic ointment in some of the smaller wounds. Brent said that Steve's body was extremely weak from what he had endured. There was a possibility that Steve would be in danger if Brent gave him any anesthetic, so he did not give him any. During the whole process, Steve woke up several times and fainted again from the pain. Wendy had to leave in these moments, unable to witness him feeling such extreme hurt. Wendy was, however, getting used to the least intense aspects of the experience after such a long evening. She was able to apply ointment to the lesser wounds without feeling much of anything at all. But maybe that was also because she was just so tired. After Brent gave Steve the intense care he needed, Brent checked Robbie again. "His fever is not too bad at this point," he told Olivia. "It does seem like it was at a dangerous level at some point, probably just before you did all that work to cool him down. He has moderately inflamed lungs, but fortunately, the fever did not seem to damage his kidneys or brain. There are bruises all over his body, but no fractures. They are superficial wounds that will heal without too much time or care." "Okay." Olivia let out a long sigh, relieved. "That is very good news, thank you, doctor." "But Steve..." Brent turned to Steve and crossed his arms tightly. "If he can make it through the worst of this, he will live. But if he can't, then..." "What?" Wendy was stunned. The tube of ointment in her hand fell to the floor. "If Steve couldn't make it, then what would happen?" "I am a doctor, not a god," Brent said, noting Wendy's reaction. "We have to leave it up to luck and whatever divine intervention you do or don't believe in now." Wendy looked again at Steve's face, realizing that, with the very real possibility of losing him, how much that would break her. "I can't lose you, Steve Shook," Wendy thought desperately. "Don't die on me. Please don't die." Olivia left the guest room with a heavy heart. Steve and his little brother Robbie had been so severely injured, and it seemed like their grandfather, the current leader of the Shook family, wasn't in control of his own mind. If that mysterious person really was able to control Grandpa Shook's thoughts, Olivia shook her head, afraid. If that's true, she thought internally, then this is the most dangerous person I've ever encountered, and I have no idea if I have the ability to fight them and win. Olivia walked downstairs and heard the scraping of plates and soft talking. She saw Wendy's mom, Desiree, eating with Chef Rory Chang, Wendy's grandfather, at their long dining table. Desiree, Chef Chang, good morning, Olivia said shyly, knowing she was catching them by surprise. She couldn't think of how she would react if either of them had walked into her dining room one morning when she didn't even know they were in the country. Both of them froze, Chef Chang mid-bite, and Desiree mid-sip of coffee. Desiree was the first to speak. Olivia, wow, good morning. Wendy didn't say you were coming. It's so great to see you, though. Come on down here. It was a bit of an impromptu visit, Olivia said, which was true. She loved and trusted Desiree and Rory, but wasn't sure how much she should reveal to them about what happened and who was currently struggling for life on their guest bed. Rory put down his coffee. When did you get here? Very early this morning, Olivia said, finally reaching the dining room. Since it was such a weird time, I didn't want to wake you up. I was nearby visiting with some other people and asked Wendy to come pick me up. Please always disturb me, Desiree said with a wave of her hand. I hope you're okay. Sit and eat. We've got plenty of food, and it's American breakfast food. That can be hard to come by here. Nobody cares about eggs as much as Americans do, Chef Chang said with a smile. Olivia felt like it was an odd relief to talk to people who had no idea what she had just been through. But at the same time, it made her want to scream. And after a traumatic night, Olivia couldn't tell if she was starving or had no appetite at all. She sat and helped herself to some very small portions, trying to appear normal. How's your mom, Olivia? Desiree asked. Desiree and Victoria had been very close friends for years, and Victoria named Desiree Olivia's godmother. She's been pretty good lately, Olivia said, being vague but truthful. I saw the news, Rory said with a sly smile. I know your dad is doing quite good as well. Are you and your parents all living together now? More or less, Olivia said. Dad is living in the place downstairs and we're upstairs. He's over for pretty much every meal and my dog goes back and forth. What is Victoria thinking? This has to be some sort of plan. Desiree rolled her eyes with a smile. Keeping him so close and yet so far. Rory coughed loudly, trying to quiet his daughter. We don't need to speculate about all that. I am telling you the truth when I say that I don't know. Olivia laughed. Desiree thought aloud. I have to get all the gossip from her later when I give her a call. Rory closed his eyes, teasingly frustrated with Desiree on this front. Maybe you could put all that matchmaking energy into your own life, Desi. Wendy is 17. She can't be your excuse to avoid dating anymore. Desiree put a hand on her chest and dropped her jaw in mock offense. Olivia got the sense this was something they'd argued about many times before. I have bad luck in love, Desiree said wistfully. You have great luck. You have a father who is desperately trying to set you up on blind dates. I keep telling you to stop doing that, Desiree said with a smile. Chef Chang crossed his arms. You're so pretty. All those guys are so excited to go out with you, and then so sad when you flake. Olivia thought the idea of him trying to set his middle-aged daughter up on dates was adorable. Dad, I think maybe the first date portion of my life has passed. I just need to get a bunch of pets and a new hobby. You married one scumbag and he's gone now. Live a little. Chef Chang threw up his hands for emphasis. I'm going to be gone someday and leave you and Wendy without a man around the house. Oh, no, Desiree cried sarcastically. Neither of us can fall asleep in the blue armchair at 8 o'clock the way a man can. You just keep having your chef make such heavy food. It makes me sleepy. Olivia grinned as the two of them bickered. It was tough to pretend that her night with Steve hadn't happened, and that his fate remained uncertain, but she was grateful for some levity between these two great people. Desiree turned to Olivia, interrupting her thoughts. Hey, where's Wendy? Have you seen her this morning? Olivia thought fast. Her tired brain had forgotten to prepare a cover story for this. Since she picked me up around 3 and we didn't get to sleep until almost dawn, she must still be sleeping. I figured I'd let her rest since she did me a favor. Olivia picked up her fork, trying to act like this was all very unexciting to her. That's nice of you to let her rest. Desiree nodded, accepting Olivia's excuse. Desiree took Olivia's hand, smiling. I hope you have time to hang around with us for a few more days. Your godmother misses you very much. Olivia smiled back, filled with love for Desiree. She did miss her very much. That sounds really nice. I should be able to do that. If you want to stay with us, please do, Chef Chang said. But you can't bring back any more of these crazy, messy young men who party all night. Wendy doesn't usually run with people like that, but you guys are young. I get that it happens. It should be said that I don't love it. Olivia was caught off guard. Everything that happened last night could certainly be described as messy, in a few different ways. Okay. Desiree frowned, confused. Dad, what? Why would you even say that? Since when is that something Olivia or Wendy would do? Before you came down this morning, Marcus let a young man out, Rory said, boring holes through Olivia with a stern look. He looked a bit older than the girls, too. What? Desiree was very surprised. Who was this man, Olivia? Was he your friend? Yes. Olivia nodded. She sighed. It would be very hard to keep all of this concealed, and she wasn't sure why she needed to anyway. It had just felt dangerous to talk about. Why not tell Desiree and Rory about Steve Shook? Okay, just clear it with us from now on, Pumpkin. Desiree rubbed Olivia's arm. Olivia tucked her thought process away, supposing she wouldn't have to decide at this moment. Desiree continued fussing over her. And eat some more. Or get some more sleep. You look so pale. Olivia smiled as she took another bite. She had to admit that, even with her lack of appetite, eating anything prepared by Chef Rory Chang was a treat. That's nice of you to worry about me. Oh, come on. Desiree's eyes filled with emotion as she rested an elbow on the table and leaned against one of her hands. You're like my second daughter. I always worry about you. Olivia took another bite to give herself time to think. Steve was not currently in a good place, so it felt like it wasn't the best time to be honest with Desiree about everything that was happening upstairs anyway. She did feel guilty about hiding anything from her and Rory. She lowered her eyes. She was so caught up in acting like everything was normal and debating over whether to be honest with Desiree and Chef Chang that Olivia felt overwhelmed as she remembered that she didn't know if her friend Steve was going to make it at all. The reality of what had happened and the possibility of losing him was an unthinkable horror, and she'd been moving and making difficult decisions non-stop for hours. In her previous life, she had never even had the chance to interact with Steve. In this life, he was among her closest friends, and they had a deep, happy friendship. Olivia thought Steve was a great person. She loved that Wendy and he had a strong connection. Although Wendy had spent so much time in recent months saying that she had let go of him and didn't like him romantically anymore, Olivia could tell that that had never been the case. The dramatic events that had caused Wendy and Steve to drift apart seemed so trivial now that his life was hanging in the balance. Wendy may have believed that she had moved on from Steve when she said to all of them in Paris. But after going through this ordeal with him, she had to know that she still cared about Steve a great deal. Olivia finished her breakfast and excused herself to go upstairs, discreetly bringing another cup of saline water to change bandages. As she passed the room where Steve and Robbie slept, she leaned toward the door and heard Wendy quietly pleading with Steve. Wake up, Steve, quickly. Don't die. I don't want you to die. I'll see you soon, I promise. Come on. Olivia remembered that Dr. Brent's advice had been that either Steve would wake up or he wouldn't, and there was nothing further they could do. So she thought it best to leave Wendy to express her desperation to Steve privately for now. She would be there for her friends soon enough. Olivia shook her head. That horrible woman from the Shook family really was a monster. At the same time, in the mansion of the Shook family in London, a beautiful woman sat on a plush sofa on the first floor. Her hands were crossed elegantly on her knees, her fingertips tapping rhythmically. Speak, she commanded. Madam, we suffered a great loss last night. The leader of her subordinates wore a wounded expression on his face. He lowered his head. Someone broke into the basement in the middle of the night and took Steve and Robbie. The beautiful woman suppressed the rage that roared inside her at this news. What about the surveillance cameras? The man gulped. They threw smoke grenades in, so the cameras in the basement didn't capture anyone. The other cameras... He paused for a moment, wincing in anticipation of her response. They were hacked. You incompetent roaches! She blurted, then bit her lip, calming herself. You were watching 2 kids, 2 dying people, and they got away from you? I'm sorry, the man said, looking at the men around him. The group all murmured an apology. A girl's smiling voice rang out from the tiny communication voice in the woman's ear. Her words bright and sour as a shiny green apple. It's useless to scold men like these. I already warned you last night, don't underestimate Olivia. Out! The woman shouted at the men, who bumped into each other, hurrying to leave her presence. She raised her hand to touch her ear and lowered her voice. Thorns, why are you so sure that it was Olivia? Do you have any other suspects? Thorns said, her scary, cheery tone never wavering. No matter which way you look at it, she is the only person who makes sense. The beautiful woman fell silent, and her eyes flashed with murderous intent. Anyone who got in her way would have to die, which included Olivia. You... Wendy stammered, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Instead, she began crying, shedding tears of relief that wet Steve's shirt as they held each other tightly. She had been distraught over the possibility that she might lose him. But he was alive, and all of the pent-up tension came out in a burst of tears. Wendy could barely remember a time when she worked so hard to pretend that she had moved on and didn't care about Steve at all. It seemed ridiculous to her now. What if we never talked again after that? Wendy wondered in horror. What if I did move on? Steve might not even be here talking to me right now. The idea of another timeline where Steve died, or where she wasn't there to help, sent Wendy through another wave of sobs. Meanwhile, Steve's mind reeled. He had just been through hell, but he knew he would do it all again just to hold Wendy in his arms like he was now. It must have been pretty bad for her to be this worried. After a few moments, Wendy wiped her eyes and looked up at Steve's face. Steve, I don't want to rush you if you still need to cry, but... Steve winced. We're squeezing pretty tight. Steve laughed weakly, but he also knew if he had to choose between Wendy holding onto him too tightly and not touching him at all, the choice would be easy. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Wendy quickly backed away, her face blushing. Steve's obviously injured. That's why we're here in the first place. How could I forget something like that? Stupid. Wendy glanced at Steve's chest and remembered how painful his wound looked when she tried her best to treat it. Did I just mess up his bandages? My dumb tears probably soaked through and made it worse. Stupid. I'm fine, Steve assured Wendy. He could tell that she was berating herself internally for causing him even a little bit of pain. If only she could know how glad I am just to have her here. I don't need anything else. To prove that he was all right so that Wendy would be less hard on herself, Steve smiled with relief and joked, I gritted my teeth through it and survived. Wendy still felt very guilty. It was so stupid of me to crush you like that without even thinking. Wendy, look at you. You could never in a million years ever crush me to death. Steve reasoned as he affectionately looked into her eyes. Oh, don't say that word. I know you're trying to be funny, but it's too close to home. Wendy tried to speak, but the tears she had fought back came bubbling up to the surface again. She was so worried about Steve for what felt like a lifetime. Everything in her world stopped. Wendy didn't know what she would do if Steve didn't survive. She could barely even think about it. A few tears fell from her eyes. I really thought... I was so scared, Steve. I understand. Steve nodded, more serious. He didn't like to see Wendy suffer, but a part of him was grateful that she cared about him that much. Wendy didn't want Steve to feel bad or ruin his good mood now that he was doing better. She reached out to gently touch Steve's hand. Once her hand met his, she saw Steve's face light up with his familiar smile. Wendy noticed that Steve still looked thin and unwell. but seeing him smile made it impossible for her not to smile too. At least he's going to be okay. Thank goodness. Wendy. Steve gently stroked Wendy's soft hand with his own. You... Steve cut off what he was about to say when he noticed something on Wendy's wrist. What happened? He asked in alarm. Huh? Wendy asked, confused. She followed Steve's gaze and looked down at her hand. She gasped when she saw the dark blue-purple bruise that encircled her delicate wrist. It looked like a bad injury, and she was just as startled to see it there. How did this happen? Steve pressed. Who could do this to her? He wondered. It's nothing, Wendy said quickly and self-consciously pulled her hand away from Steve's. She didn't want to upset him, but she knew the bruise must have been from when Steve had passed out and grabbed onto her wrist. She'd been so concerned about him that she didn't even notice the bruise develop since then. Wendy kept her eyes down. That doesn't look like nothing to me. You have to be more careful, Steve pleaded with Wendy. He clocked that she seemed just as surprised to see the bruise there as he was. How did she not notice it before? Next time you're in a coma, you can do your part and choose to grab the blankets and sheets instead of her wrist. Olivia snarked as she pushed open the door and walked in holding a glass of water. She wanted to give Wendy and Steve plenty of warning before bursting in on them, but she had already heard in their minds that Steve discovered Wendy's bruise. Wendy would never admit that Steve hurt her, even if it wasn't intentional, Olivia thought. He was just subconsciously grabbing her wrist. Nobody can blame him for that. He was unconscious for crying out loud. But Wendy would do anything to keep Steve from blaming himself for her injury. And I can't listen to Steve going on about how it's Wendy's own fault. So Olivia intervened and explained to save Wendy the trouble. I guess Wendy could always stand to be a little more careful anyway, though, Olivia added. Upon hearing this, Steve suddenly remembered the horrible dream he experienced when he was unconscious. In the dream, he used all of his strength to grab onto the hand that was reaching out to him in order to save his life. He was flooded with the realization that he actually might have hurt someone in real life. That someone was clearly Wendy, and he was ashamed. He looked back at Wendy and her wrist, newly horrified at what he unconsciously did. Wendy, Steve started to say. Wendy saw the wheels turning in Steve's head and shook her head. It's nothing. She laughed lightly. Brent the doctor said that once you woke up, we should get some sugar in you and give you medicine. I'll go get it. Olivia nodded. Wendy, just so you know, your mom and grandfather are downstairs having breakfast. They don't know about Steve or Robbie being here. Olivia approached Steve with the glass of water and helped him sit up. Here, Steve, drink some water. Don't worry, Wendy, I'll watch him till you get back. Okay. Wendy nodded gratefully and left them to get the medicine. Before she closed the door behind her, she stole one last glance at Steve as he drank some of the water Olivia offered to him. He's really awake. He looks so much better. Steve took several long sips of water and closed his eyes. He had not realized how thirsty he was, and the cool water hitting his tongue was the most refreshing thing in the world. He sighed in relief. Thank you, he said to Olivia. That is some good stuff. Water? Yeah, it's pretty popular around here. Olivia laughed. Steve took a few more gulps and sat back, satisfied. All done? Olivia asked. Yes, thank you. Steve sighed. Olivia took the glass back and set it down. Let's get you back to resting. She helped Steve lie back down on the bed and covered him with the blanket. Olivia gently felt Steve's forehead with the back of her hand. The fever has gone down. That's good, Steve said softly with his eyes still closed. He was exhausted but managed to turn his head and look at Olivia. His brow furrowed as he realized something. Why are you here? I had a bad feeling that you were in trouble, I guess, and I happened to be right. Olivia smiled at Steve teasingly. Why are you surprised to see me? Yeah, a little bit, Steve admitted, but smiled back. Well, I was surprised to see you so close to death's door, so I'm glad I came just in time. She felt Steve's forehead again, still a little warm. Olivia's expression darkened. I need to update Steve on his grandfather. We need to talk about your grandfather." "What about him?" Steve asked, concerned and more alert. "Well, I was under the impression that he was—" Olivia started, but she considered her words carefully. Steve was just on the brink of death, and this is his grandfather we're talking about, so I don't want to be insensitive. I'll avoid using the word dying as it's so harsh. She started over. "I've been under the impression that your grandfather wouldn't be with us much longer. When we saw him, though, he was acting strange and seemed in much better health than we expected. He didn't seem unwell at all." "He doesn't look like he's dying, does he?" Steve confirmed darkly. "I don't know where they found that woman, the venom witchcraft expert." Steve shook his head. "Venom witchcraft?" Olivia asked, stunned. "Like the ancient poison methods?" "That's the one," Steve nodded. "Did you know that there are venom witchcraft experts?" "I've heard of them," Olivia nodded. "Well, Pandora found a venom witchcraft expert named Morgana," Steve shared. "Morgana? Are you sure?" Olivia asked, surprised. Her mind raced. "Wasn't Morgana the rude girl we crossed paths with at the airport? Brent's sister, Morgana?" "Yeah, I'm sure. Do you know her?" Steve asked Olivia. "I think so." Olivia frowned, thinking. "When we went to see our grandfather, his condition was very bad. Bad enough that he made a will. It said that he wanted to leave 80% of the Shook estate to me, and the remaining 20% to Robbie once he turns 18. "Wow," Olivia said as she put the pieces together. "Of course, that's why Pandora had Steve and Robbie almost tortured to death like that. She's a younger, beautiful woman who's been serving Old Man Shook for many years, and she wanted a return on her investment. Finding out he didn't leave her a cent must have sent her out for revenge. I knew that will would cause a lot of trouble in the family, so I hid it while my grandfather was still alive and before anyone could see it," Steve explained. "But that sent the whole family into a frenzy anyway, and it's torn us apart. Pandora is a force to be reckoned with." "So she brought in Morgana to use venom witchcraft somehow?" Olivia asked. "Pandora hired Morgana to use very special venom witchcraft that can control people, in their minds." Steve shook his head. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's what's happened." Olivia nodded to show she believed him. "Trust me, Steve, I've seen some crazy things you wouldn't believe." "Puppet poison. It makes the victim feel as if the poisoner is inside their mind. First, she used it on my grandfather," Steve said. "Puppet poison," Olivia mulled it over. "So that's why when I read Steve's grandfather's thoughts, he was crying out for help. It sounded like Pandora's voice and I didn't understand, but this is why. Pandora's controlling his mind. It all makes sense. Pandora wants to control my grandfather into creating a new will that hands her the entire estate. In order to do that, though, she needs the original will, and they still don't know where I hid it," Steve continued. "So that's why she's been torturing you and Robbie to find out where you hid the will." "Exactly," Steve agreed. "I think there's a little more to it than that. It seems to me like someone else is pulling the strings. Someone with even more power who Pandora serves. But who?" Olivia frowned. "That's the million-dollar question. Who's this mysterious mastermind?" "We have to find out who's really behind all of this." Olivia paced in her room, still reeling from what she learned during her conversation with Steve Shook. Pandora was using venom witchcraft to control the aging Shook patriarch in order to create a new will that would make Pandora his sole beneficiary and cut Steve and his brother Robbie out entirely. Morgana turned out to be a venom witchcraft expert who gave Pandora the puppet poison to control Steve's grandfather's mind. But who else was calling the shots on this plan for their own benefit? Just a few years ago, Olivia never would have believed in things like venom witchcraft and puppet poison, much less mind control. I guess being resurrected as your younger self with telekinetic powers to take revenge on the people who betrayed you will open your mind to more possibilities, Olivia thought. Now that Olivia knew what she knew, she wanted to inform Chris. She picked up her phone and dialed his number. After just one ring, Chris answered. "Olivia?" "Hey, where are you right now?" Olivia asked as she pressed her phone to her ear. I'm at Raven Park. Are you all right over there? Chris asked. How is Steven and his brother doing? They're in pretty bad shape, but they're going to be okay. Did Brent get there? Olivia asked. She thought about how he was closer to this case than any of them realized. He just got here not too long ago, Chris answered. Why? I'll get to that, Olivia sighed. Remember Morgana? Brent's sister? Chris asked. Is she involved? Yes. Steve told me that Morgana is a venom witchcraft expert. Apparently, Pandora hired her in order to get her hands on puppet poison, which is used to control people's minds. Morgana slipped some puppet poison to Steve's grandfather so that Pandora could control him. He didn't see him himself, and that's the reason why. You're sure Brent's sister is responsible? Chris said, stunned. I know it sounds crazy, but that's why I asked about Brent. I need you to ask him if he knows of any cures for puppet poison, Olivia instructed. I see. Chris nodded. He hesitated before going on. Olivia, please be careful. If you even get a tiny weird feeling about anything or something seems off, call me right away, Chris urged. It was clear in his voice that it was hard for him to be away from Olivia when danger could be lurking around any corner. I will. Try not to worry, I'll check in later. Olivia reassured him and hung up the call. Olivia returned to the room where Steve and Robbie rested and found that he had already taken his medicine. Robbie had also awoken and sat beside Steve's bed. Olivia was glad to see them on the mend. Wendy, do you think you can keep an eye on them on your own for a while longer? Olivia asked. I have something I need to take care of, but I'll have to leave for a bit. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's not safe for you to be out by yourself right now. Wendy worried. I couldn't take it if something happened to you after I let you go alone. Olivia smiled back at Wendy's anxious face. Wendy cares so much. It's lovely, but it's amazing the stress doesn't kill her. Dusty is back. I'll ask him to go with me, Olivia reassured Wendy. And remember, don't let your mom or grandpa know that Steve and Robbie are here just yet. We have to keep things under wraps until we're absolutely sure it's safe. Right, of course. Wendy nodded resolutely. Olivia smiled gratefully and left. Wendy turned back to Steve and Robbie. An awkward silence hung in the air between all of them. Steve, I'm starving, Robbie said hoarsely, breaking the silence at last. As soon as he said this, Robbie's stomach growled loudly enough for all of them to hear. Wendy breathed a sigh of relief at the end of the awkward silence, as well as for a helpful task to keep her busy. I'll go down to the kitchen and see what I can get for you to eat. Wendy stood up eagerly. You two keep resting, I'll be right back. Wendy hurried out of the room. After Wendy was gone for a few minutes, Robbie turned to Steve with a curious expression on his face. Hey, Steve, he hissed in a low voice. Is that the girl who wrote the love letter about you? Yes, Steve nodded and groaned. Oh God, don't remind me. Steve's mind went straight to all of the mistakes he made in handling that fiasco, and it made his stomach turn to relive it. It would forever make him cringe at his own behavior. He was incredibly grateful that things had turned out for the better since after so much time had gone by. Wendy and I really have been through a lot together over the years, haven't we? Are you two together now? Is she going to be my sister-in-law? Robbie asked seriously. He rubbed his chin with his hand, deep in thought as he considered the possibility. No, well, not yet. Steve grinned and reached out to playfully mess with Robbie's hair. Since you're asking, what do you think of her as a potential sister-in-law? Steve raised his eyebrows, curious. Robbie pursed his lips and thought hard for a moment. She looks all right, but she worries and cries a lot. Robbie determined. Is something wrong with her? What if those things pass down to your kids? You have to think about these things, Robbie cautioned. Steve laughed and smiled at his younger brother. I definitely did not worry about that stuff when I was his age. Hey, you're talking about the girl that just saved your life and mine. Where did you hear about that stuff? I told you not to watch so many internet videos. What can I say? A hobby's a hobby. Robbie shrugged. He tilted his head thoughtfully. But I guess as long as you really like her, I could get used to her. But remember, think about it carefully. It's a big decision." "Yeah, I know, don't worry," Steve reassured Robbie with a gentle look in his eyes. "When you're older, you'll understand. But I've actually thought about it for a very long time. Wendy and I have been through a lot, and sometimes I thought it was going to kill me, but we've always found our way back to each other. When I woke up from being in a coma and I saw Wendy at my side with those tears in her eyes, I knew I was done thinking about it. She's the one. It's always been her." Steve and his brother sat in silence for a moment. "I still think Olivia's better sister-in-law material," Robbie pouted. "She's smart and beautiful. She saved me twice, and I don't think I've seen her cry once." Steve laughed at his brother's childish understanding of finding a partner to spend his life with. "When I was in a coma, I could sort of hear her talking to me. She had a very gentle voice," Robbie insisted. "Olivia is a very impressive person and a great friend," Steve nodded. "But falling in love isn't always about falling for the person everyone thinks is the most impressive. Sometimes people are just right for each other in their own ways, and you can't explain it." "Oh," Robbie nodded thoughtfully. "I guess that's true. I saw a video on the internet about two people. They were not good looking, and they had boring jobs, and they weren't funny at all. But they fell in love anyway because they both wanted to live on a boat, and it worked out for them. I think Wendy and I deserve a little more credit than that." Steve laughed. Maybe." Robbie thought it over. "Hey, boys," Wendy said as she gently pushed the door open and walked in holding a steaming hot dish of food. "I found some leftover pot pie in the kitchen. I just heated it up." "Those are the most beautiful words you could have said," Steve said practically with hearts in his eyes. "I'm starving." Robbie sat up eagerly. Wendy pursed her lips and brought the dish closer. "It might be a little overdone." She frowned down at the pie. "Overdone?" Robbie eyed the food warily. "I guess I don't mind a pie with a little bit of crunch." Robbie was so hungry that his stomach felt like it was eating itself. "I'll eat just about anything right now, just hand it over. I probably can't even really taste properly right now, so how bad could it be?" Wendy reluctantly cut into the pot pie and struggled to force the knife through the burnt crust. With one last push, she broke through to the bottom of the dish and scooped 2 pieces out onto plates. She handed them to Steve and Robbie and watched them hopeful. The 2 brothers dug in ravenously with their forks and took heaping bites. Wendy watched their faces turn from cautious optimism to utter disgust. "What have you done to this poor pot pie?" Robbie cried. "It's like chewing gravel. All you had to do was reheat it." "I'm so sorry. I was worried it wouldn't be warm enough, and then before I knew it, it was turning black. I tried to cut off those parts, but I'm a terrible cook. Sometimes I get lucky, but today was not one of those days. I'll never go in the kitchen again, I promise." Steve was much kinder about his disappointment in the food, and he dutifully continued chewing with a curious expression. "Wendy, I'm not feeling so great. Could you help me out and feed me some bites, please?" Wendy could see on his face that he was holding a lot back. "Okay," she agreed and picked up his plate and fork. "Open your mouth, here comes the airplane," Wendy joked. Robbie rolled his eyes at them. "I can't watch this," he mumbled. Wendy looked at the fork full of burnt pot pie and couldn't bring herself to put it in Steve's mouth. She set the fork down. "Forget it. I can't put you through this. You've already been through enough. I'll go back to the kitchen and find something else for you to eat. Something edible, at least." "No, it's fine. At least one bite," Steve tried to assure her. Secretly, he wasn't too disappointed that she might find something else. Her cooking was pretty awful. "No way, just hang on, I'll find something," Wendy insisted. She hurried out of the room. Robbie raised his eyebrows at Steve and pointed to his plate of burnt pot pie. "You see what I'm saying? You really need to think marriage through. It's in the details." Steve rolled his eyes. "It's not that bad, Robbie. I could maybe block out the taste since I'm still recovering, but it hurts my teeth. That's hard to ignore." Robbie reasoned. "Mine's not the worst. Here, let me try yours," Steve asked and reached for Robbie's plate. Robbie held it away from Steve protectively. "No, you almost died already, but this might finish the job if you eat this." Robbie stuck his tongue out to express his distaste. Come on, just give me a bite, Steve coaxed. Okay, fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. Robbie carefully picked up a forkful of his pot pie slice and slowly brought it towards Steve's mouth. Open up, brave, brave man. Steve opened his mouth and Robbie stuck the food in his mouth. Steve maintained a steady poker face as he chewed thoughtfully. Robbie watched his face for any sign of a negative reaction, but there was none. Did you actually like it? Robbie asked incredulously. Steve finally swallowed with a loud gulp. You have to admit, it's kind of magical how she made something taste that bad just by reheating it, Steve said dreamily. That's really special. That's it. He's lost his mind. Robbie put his head in his hands. Are you really going to marry this girl? That's a great question, Steve thought. Am I? Trouble. Olivia forced a smile at Henry. Although she'd only met him once, she already knew this man was rotten to his core. Hello, Henry. We were just hoping to say hello to the Goodwins if you... Henry interrupted Olivia before she even had a chance to finish her sentence. I said, do you have an appointment? Yes or no? Henry smirked, clearly getting off on being able to talk down to her like this. He had been given orders to make sure everyone visiting the Goodwin Manor had an appointment. But there were, of course, exceptions to the rule. Henry knew that Olivia, being from the family she was from, would definitely fall under the category of being an exception. But Henry hated pretty girls who talked back, and because of that, he hated Olivia immediately. Henry believed that women should be seen and not heard. He definitely thought Olivia was a bombshell. It was really a waste she had to go and ruin it by opening her mouth. The more defiant a woman was, the more of a turnoff she was to Henry. Olivia clenched her fists. No, we don't have an appointment, but I'm sure if you just told them that Olivia Johnson... Again, Henry interrupted her. Can't let you in without an appointment, sweetheart. Cringing at his use of sweetheart, Olivia tuned in quickly to Henry's inner thoughts and immediately discovered that this was a lie. She knew, and Henry knew, that all he had to do was tell the patriarch of the Goodwin family that a daughter of both the Johnson and Park families was here to visit, and he would gladly welcome her into the home. But Henry was a vile, vindictive man, and Olivia knew there was no way he would let her in easily. Olivia's face was turning red. She could feel the anger rising up all the way from her toes. Dusty must have sensed this because he quickly stepped in front of Olivia. Sir, if you wouldn't mind just checking with someone to see if they might be able to meet with Olivia Johnson, the eldest daughter of the Johnson family, we'd be mighty appreciative. Dusty tried to seem as humble as possible, but Henry didn't seem to care. I told the girl already, you're not getting in without an appointment. Henry looked Olivia up and down a moment, then added, or maybe we could work out some other kind of trade. If you want to get in that bad, why don't you prove it to me? Henry wriggled his eyebrows suggestively at Olivia. Dusty stepped forward then, getting right in Henry's face. You do not speak to her like that, he threatened. Or you'll do what? Henry laughed. You're worth nothing to anyone. Henry sucked in the air, then spat onto the ground right in front of Dusty and Olivia. Oh, you did not just do that, Olivia snarled under her breath. She immediately turned, walking a few feet from the disgusting man, and pulled out her phone. Henry smiled triumphantly as he watched Olivia walk away. Olivia quickly dialed a number and held the phone up to her ear. Please pick it up, Olivia thought to herself. Luckily for her, after only a couple of rings, the other end picked up. Hello, Madam Watson, it's Olivia Johnson. I'm so sorry to bother you. Olivia paused, waiting as the other person spoke. Oh, all right, Evelyn, it is. Olivia smirked over her shoulder at Henry, who narrowed his eyes as he attempted to eavesdrop. Anyhow, I'm just trying to pay a visit to the Goodwin Manor at the moment. On the other end, Evelyn Watson interrupted her. After listening for a moment, Olivia let out a lilting laugh. Oh, you are bad. Anyhow, I'm trying to enter to give my regards, but some brute at the door won't even let me in. She emphasized the word brute so Henry would be sure to hear her. Oh, all right, I'll hold. Olivia turned to smile devilishly at Henry. Just a second later, Henry's own cell phone rang and he fished it out of his pocket. His face fell when he saw the contact info from his boss. "Hello, sir," he answered immediately, nodding along out of nervousness, despite the fact that the person on the other end could not see him. "Absolutely, sir. I'm sorry, sir." There was a pause as it was clear he was being chastised. Olivia could even hear the faint buzz of yelling over the phone. "No, sir, I did not realize she was a Johnson." Henry lied through his teeth. "Yes, sir, I am familiar with Madam Evelyn Watson." Henry's face was turning pink as he took the verbal beating from his boss. "No, sir, I would never want to embarrass the Goodwin name." "Yes, sir." Finally, Henry hung up the phone. Looking down at his feet, he spoke quietly. "You both may enter." "I'm sorry, what was that?" Olivia asked facetiously. "You may both enter the Goodwin Manor," Henry said through clenched teeth. Olivia still had her phone pressed to her ear, and Madam Evelyn Watson's voice suddenly returned through the receiver. "Thank you so much, Evelyn. I really appreciate your help. Goodbye for now." Olivia hung up the call and skipped forward to the door of the Goodwin Manor. She scowled at Henry as he stepped aside to let her in. Dusty followed behind her, grinning at the man for acting so high and mighty. As soon as Olivia and Dusty had passed him, Henry muttered some curse words under his breath, then reached into his jacket, pulled out a small pistol, and switched the safety to off before slipping it back in. "You'll pay for that, Olivia Johnson," Henry thought darkly. "Jason may not be a man enough to deal with you, but I sure as hell am." Dusty and Olivia entered the Goodwin Manor and paused inside the grand foyer. Olivia marveled as she took in the art covering the walls of the foyer alone. She immediately spotted paintings by some of the greats: Picasso, Monet, Degas, and Goya. Olivia couldn't believe it. One of these paintings alone would be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. "I should have made Jason pay me a lot more than 15 mil, Olivia thought to herself. I didn't realize the Goodwins were this kind of rich. Olivia had heard tell of the Goodwins' great fortune, but she had no idea how lavishly they had chosen to live. She was used to families like the Jones. She knew they were incredibly wealthy, and obviously they lived in much more luxury than most of the world. But they had an understated elegance about them that they carried into every aspect of their lives. The Goodwins, it seemed, were the opposite of understated. As soon as you walked into their foyer, they clearly wanted you to know that they had more money than you, and they weren't afraid to use it. Ahem. A man cleared his throat politely, behind the awestruck Olivia and Dusty, startling them both. They turned and found an older gentleman in a proper English butler's uniform. "Sir, madam, I have been sent to escort you. Won't you please follow me?" "Of course, thank you," Olivia answered, then grabbed Dusty's sleeve to pull him away from marveling at the paintings. "Is he escorting us on a tour? This place is like a museum," Dusty whispered to Olivia, who stifled a laugh. Dusty continued to stare at the artwork and the architecture as they made their way through the opulent house. The butler led Dusty and Olivia through a series of hallways, each one grander than the next. Olivia saw fine artwork, amazing carvings, and luxury in absolute excess until finally they reached a sumptuously furnished, oak-paneled room. In the middle of the room, in a tall emerald green armchair with royal-looking carvings, sat an old man who smiled warmly as they entered the room. This must be Jason's grandfather, Olivia thought, the patriarch of the Goodwin family. Olivia took a step forward, confidently extending her hand to the old man. "Hello, sir. My name is Olivia Johnson. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." The old man took her hand in his. "The pleasure is all mine." Suddenly, Jason Goodwin jumped up from his spot on the couch on the other side of the room. "How dare you show your face here? You owe me an apology, harlot." Grandpa Goodwin's face turned ice cold as he turned to his grandson. "Shut up and sit down, boy," he commanded in a tone so terrifying that Olivia and Dusty both felt they should sit down and shut up as well. The senior Goodwin turned back to Olivia, his face warm and pleasant now. "I apologize for my grandson. He doesn't know when he needs to keep his mouth shut." "Oh, that's all right." Olivia shot Jason a condescending smile. I actually wanted to stop by in order to say thank you to your grandson." "Oh, is that so?" Mr. Goodwin raised an eyebrow at his grandson now. Was it possible Jason had done something right for once? "Me?" Jason blurted out. "What could you possibly have to thank me for?" "For the money, of course," Olivia answered pleasantly. "I'm just glad you were finally able to pay us back." "What do you mean, pay you back?" Jason couldn't stand it anymore. He shot up from his seat, advancing towards Olivia, who remained in her spot. "Well, you hurt my friend Dusty when we were all in Paris." Olivia gestured to Dusty, who waved, then signaled to his previously wounded arm. "And it seems you owed us at least $15 million for that, if not more." Grandpa Goodwin looked between Olivia and his grandson while he listened to the tale unfold. This was sounding more like the Jason Goodwin he knew. "What? But I didn't—" Jason stammered. He knew Olivia was trying to make him look bad in front of his grandfather, and he wouldn't allow that to happen. "You shot me too, we're even. In fact, I was hurt way worse than this guy. If anything, you owe me." Olivia looked at Jason, startled. She held a hand to her chest as if he had just accused her of something she was completely unaware of. "I shot you?" Olivia looked to Dusty for confirmation. He wrinkled his brow, suggesting the story didn't add up to his memory. "Well, not you exactly." Jason stuttered over his words, trying to figure out what he could possibly say to get his grandfather on his side. Olivia held up a hand to stop the boy. "I'm sorry you were shot, but it wasn't Dusty nor myself who did it. So you'll have to take it up with the man responsible. I believe it was one of the Jorgensens, no?" "That's right," Dusty nodded. "A Jorgensen indeed." Dusty and Olivia shared a quick glance. They were both having fun at Jason's expense. Mr. Goodwin's face fell once again. He knew his grandson was stupid, but whatever he had done had been foolish enough to get him shot by one of the Jorgensens. They were one of the oldest and most powerful families in the entire world. There was no way Mr. Goodwin would be able to take revenge on Jorgensen for hurting one of his family members, although when it came to Jason, it's not like he would try anyway. "This grandson of mine gets stupider by the day," Olivia heard the old man thinking, and she smiled to herself. "I don't care if it was a Jorgensen who did it. He did it on your orders." Jason shrieked. "It's your fault I was hurt. You deserve to pay." "That's enough." Grandpa Goodwin's voice echoed in the high-ceilinged room. "You! How dare you kneel before me this instant?" Jason smirked victoriously at Olivia. Now she would finally pay for everything she had done. But Olivia just stood there, smiling back at Jason. After a moment, she opened her mouth to speak. "Oh, Jason, he wasn't talking to me." The Goodwin estate continued to glitter with the grandeur of old money and power. "I said kneel," Grandpa Goodwin repeated, his tone low and menacing. The smug smile that was etched onto Jason's face faltered as he realized the command was meant for him. Olivia, catching the shift in focus, couldn't help but let a smug smirk dance across her lips. Jason's face contorted with fury and humiliation, intensified by Olivia's evident delight. Behind Olivia, Dusty stood like an unyielding shadow, mirroring her expression of smug satisfaction. The room held its breath, as Jason, caught in a battle between pride and obedience, hesitated. Grandpa Goodwin's presence loomed larger with every passing second, an unspoken threat hanging in the air. Grandpa Goodwin, his patience wearing thin, raised his voice, the command more forceful this time. "Kneel!" he barked, his tone brooking no argument. Jason, despite his evident reluctance, remained stubbornly upright. His head hung low, but his knees unyielding. The air in the room grew heavier, charged with the silent battle of wills. Grandpa Goodwin, his frustration evident, sucked his teeth in disdain. "Can you not hear? Are you simply a good-for-nothing idiot?" he sneered, his disappointment in Jason palpable. In a swift movement, Grandpa Goodwin raised his cane and brought it down sharply on Jason's knees. The impact forced Jason to the ground, his body wincing in pain. But it was the sting of humiliation that truly hurt. As he knelt there, defeated and subdued, Jason grimaced, acutely aware of Olivia's eyes on him. Jason's pride was shattered, replaced by a seething mixture of pain, anger, and deep-seated resentment. As Jason knelt on the ground, a torrent of thoughts raged through his mind, primarily focused on one thing: his hatred for Olivia. He couldn't stand the thought of her witnessing his humiliation, and his internal monologue was a storm of anger and resentment. I can't believe I have to endure this in front of her. I hate her. She's enjoying this. He seethed internally. Olivia, on her part, struggled to maintain her composure, a smile threatening to break across her face. She managed to keep it in check, masking her satisfaction with a neutral expression. Grandpa Goodwin, unfazed by the inner turmoil, issued his next command with a stern tone. "Jason, apologize now," he demanded, his voice echoing the authority he held. Jason's eyes, filled with a desperate plea, met his grandfather's, silently begging to be spared the indignity of apologizing to Olivia. But the unyielding gaze of his grandfather made it clear there would be no reprieve. "Apologize, Jason," Grandpa Goodwin reiterated, his voice now laced with potent mix of command and disappointment, exerting his considerable power over his grandson. Just as Jason's lips parted, ready to mutter his apology, Olivia's voice sliced through the tense air. "I don't want an apology, Mr. Goodwin," she said, her tone calm yet firm. She turned to look directly at Jason, her eyes sharp, cutting through him. Her refusal caught both Jason and Grandpa Goodwin off guard. Jason's mouth snapped shut, his humiliation mixing with confusion. Grandpa Goodwin, meanwhile, raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed by Olivia's unexpected show of maturity. "I believe in mercy, even for Jason," Olivia continued, her gaze still fixed on Jason, who couldn't help but wince under her scrutiny. "I would prefer an apology that comes from his heart, not one forced out by fear or obligation." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and unsaid implications. Jason, still on his knees, struggled to process this unexpected turn, while Grandpa Goodwin nodded slowly, his expression softening as he regarded Olivia with newfound respect. Grandpa Goodwin leaned on his cane, his eyes narrowing as he looked at Jason, still trembling on the ground. "You're lucky, boy. Olivia here is far kinder than I would ever be." His voice carried a weight that echoed through the opulent room, leaving no room for doubt or questioning. "Stand up," he commanded. Jason, his movements hesitant and fraught with nervous energy, slowly rose to his feet, his eyes carefully avoiding his grandfather's stern gaze. Grandpa Goodwin's stare was piercing as he said, "Go to your room. I don't want to see you right now." His words were final, a dismissal that resonated with authority and finality. Jason, his head bowed in shame, turned and left the room in silence, his footsteps a quiet echo of defeat. As Jason walked away, a low, menacing mutter escaped his lips, barely audible yet filled with a venomous promise. "This isn't the end, Olivia. You'll pay for this," he hissed, his voice a blend of bitterness and resolve. Each word was a vow, a silent oath of retribution. Inwardly, Olivia couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. In her mind, she thought, checkmate. Once again, she had managed to outplay Jason. Her victory was silent, but no less sweet for its subtlety. Olivia, shifting her focus back to Mr. Goodwin, offered a polite smile. "Mr. Goodwin, I apologize for showing up unannounced like this," she said with a hint of grace in her tone. Grandpa Goodwin's response was a warm, inviting smile. "Oh, don't worry about it, dear," he reassured her, his demeanor gentle and accommodating. "Can I offer you something to drink or perhaps some food?" His voice held a grandfatherly concern, making the vast estate feel momentarily homely. Olivia, appreciating the gesture, replied with a soft shake of her head. "Thank you, but I'm okay for now," she said, her voice calm and collected. "Let's move to my study for a more comfortable conversation," Grandpa Goodwin suggested as he gestured toward a grand oak-paneled door. Grandpa Goodwin led the way, Olivia and Dusty followed him through the elegant corridors of the Goodwin estate. As they entered the study, they were enveloped in an ambiance of old-world charm. Shelves brimming with aged books lined the walls, and the faint scent of mahogany filled the air. Grandpa Goodwin gestured towards plush leather chairs situated around a large, ornately carved desk. Olivia and Dusty took their seats, each with a sense of curiosity and amazement. How rich are they? Olivia thought. Olivia leaned forward, ready to dazzle the Goodwin patriarch. Mr. Goodwin, I came today for 2 reasons, she began. Firstly, to handle the situation with Jason, and secondly, to have the honor of meeting you. She presented 2 elegantly wrapped items, a box of premium cigars and a bottle of aged wine. Grandpa Goodwin's eyes lit up with a spark of interest as he accepted the gifts. He examined them with an appreciative nod. Wow, this is quite generous of you, Olivia. I must say I'm quite familiar with the Johnson family, especially your grandfather, Jack, he remarked, his voice carrying a note of intrigue. Olivia smiled and faltered. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. I'm here to forge a new path for the Johnson name, she replied with earnest. My father, Michael, and I are striving to make a significant impact on the gaming industry with our company, Confluence. We believe it's the future, and we're at its forefront. Grandpa Goodwin's expression shifted into a knowing smile, one that hinted at a lifetime of strategic thinking. It's quite admirable, Olivia, how you're striving to carve out your own legacy, separate from your grandfather's shadow, he observed thoughtfully. Olivia's smile was poised yet genuine. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. I believe it's time for the Johnson family to be known for more than just our past. The pair continued their conversation, each word carefully chosen, like pieces moved in a chess game. Interesting, mused Grandpa Goodwin. But why move away from a legacy that's already so established? Isn't there power in that name? His gaze was steady. Olivia responded. My grandfather's legacy, his path, well, it comes with certain aspects I'd prefer not to define us. Grandpa Goodwin leaned forward, his eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to peer into Olivia's mind. Tell me, Olivia, did your father leave because of the legacy your grandfather left behind? Olivia sensed the underlying challenge in his question, a test of her composure and insight. She met his gaze directly, her expression unflinching. Mr. Goodwin, I can't speak for my father's decisions, but I do know he's an exceptionally brilliant businessman. When we work together, the potential feels boundless. We're not defined by the past, but excited by what we can build for the future. Grandpa Goodwin's smirk grew, a silent nod to her unwavering stance. He was clearly impressed by her ability to navigate his probing question without stumbling. For her part, Olivia knew exactly how to speak to someone of the Goodwin patriarch's standing. You handle yourself well, Olivia. It's refreshing to see such poise and clarity in someone so young. They continued their verbal dance, Olivia deftly addressing each of Grandpa Goodwin's challenges with grace and intelligence. It was evident she was winning this match. Finally, Grandpa Goodwin leaned back, a look of genuine respect crossing his features. You've certainly made an impression, Olivia. You're very smart, and I think you do well here in London. You should move here. We could maybe make some space for you. Olivia's eyes sparkled with triumph, yet she remained composed. Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. London is charming and all, but New York's where I belong, Olivia responded. Grandpa Goodwin nodded, his eyes squinted as he tried to get a deeper read on Olivia before he asked, Are you familiar with Fitzcarraldo, Olivia? I can't say that I am, Mr. Goodwin, she admitted, her curiosity piqued. Fitzcarraldo is a tale of ambition and determination, Grandpa Goodwin began, his eyes holding Olivia's. It's about a man who dreams of bringing opera to the jungle. To achieve his dream, he pulls a steamship over a mountain. Quite the metaphor for overcoming the impossible. Olivia listened, the story's undercurrents not lost on her. Fitzcarraldo's relentless pursuit mirrored her own ambitions. But the thing about overcoming the impossible is, most people can't do it. Grandpa Goodwin said, his eyes darker and more threatening than they've been. Never one to back down from a challenge or the impossible, Olivia sat up straighter as a silent challenge. Grandpa Goodwin leaned back, his voice rich with hidden meanings. Just remember, Olivia, a forest can only have two giants. It's all about finding your ground. Olivia pondered his cryptic advice, wondering what layers lay beneath those words. I'm sure I'll find my own forest to thrive in, Olivia responded, her voice steady. A maid quietly entered, her movements smooth and efficient, bringing in a tray with an exquisite tea set. Goodwin's movements were meticulous as he prepared the tea, his hands deftly picking up the teapot, pouring the hot water with precision over the tea leaves, and watching as the liquid darkened. Olivia observed each deliberate motion, her eyes following the dance of the steam rising from the pot. Finally, Grandpa Goodwin handed Olivia a cup of freshly brewed tea. She took a cautious sip, her taste buds initially recoiling at the bitterness, then gradually yielding to the surprising sweetness that followed. Her brow furrowed slightly, the complex flavors of the tea mirroring the complexity of their conversation. Grandpa Goodwin observed Olivia's reaction to the tea with a knowing smile. Like this tea, Olivia? Success in life and status often starts bitter, but with patience, it turns sweet, he remarked, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. Olivia nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Thank you for your wisdom, Mr. Goodwin. I appreciate your time and insights, she said with genuine gratitude. Rising from their seats, Olivia and Dusty prepared to leave. As they made their way out, Grandpa Goodwin's gaze lingered on Olivia. After Olivia and Dusty departed, Grandpa Goodwin walked slowly to his phone and dialed a familiar number. His call was answered by none other than Jack, Olivia's grandfather. I just had the pleasure of meeting your granddaughter, Olivia, Grandpa Goodwin began, his voice carrying a tone of respect. I must say she's wise beyond her years, utterly brilliant. On the other end of the line, Jack's grumble was audible, a mix of acknowledgement and annoyance. He knew all too well of Olivia's sharp intellect. Grandpa Goodwin's tone turned serious, but with the slightest hint of pleasure. I'm gonna level with you, Jack. Letting Michael leave was a grave mistake. Mark my words, Michael and his daughter will be your downfall. Grandpa Goodwin waited for Jack's response. He held the phone tightly, his voice a blend of concern and assertiveness. When Jack didn't say anything, he pressed on, his voice firm and laced with urgency. Jack, you're skating on thin ice. Your granddaughter, Olivia, she's more than just a teenage girl. She has every influential figure in London wrapped around her finger. You need to recognize the potential power shift happening here. Jack's voice crackled with defiance over the phone. Goodwin, you're blowing this out of proportion. Olivia's just a young woman trying to prove herself, and Michael, he's always been more bark than bite. I built the Johnson Empire from scratch. They're merely living off my legacy. Jack, you're not hearing me. Grandpa Goodwin pressed on. I've seen Olivia in action. The way she handles herself, the respect she commands, it's remarkable. And with Michael's business acumen behind Confluence, they're a formidable duo. You need to reconcile with them for the sake of our intertwined interests. Jack scoffed. Reconcile? Do you think I need to bow down to them, Goodwin? You forgot who you're talking to. I've steered through rougher seas than this. Jack, this isn't about bowing down, it's about strategic alliances. Olivia's building her own empire, independent of the Johnson name. If she and Michael decide to turn against you, it could be catastrophic. Not just for you, but for all of us who are linked to the Johnsons. Goodwin explained, trying to reason with Jack's stubborn pride. Jack's voice was edged with annoyance. Strategic alliances, you say? Listen, Goodwin. Olivia and Michael won't risk their position by going against me. They know better than to bite the hand that's fed them all these years. Jack, pride and past achievements won't protect you against the tide of change, Goodwin warned. Jack's tone hardened. Goodwin, I appreciate your concern, but I know my own family. I'll handle Olivia and Michael in my own way. Don't forget, I've played this game for longer than they have." There was a finality in Jack's tone that made Grandpa Goodwin realize the futility of the conversation. As he hung up the phone, he couldn't help but feel a sense of danger. The game was changing, and he might be an old dog out of new tricks. Grandpa Goodwin sat pensively, his fingers drumming on the polished mahogany desk. The conversation with Jack had left a sour taste in his mouth. He gazed out the window, lost in thought about the shifting power dynamics, particularly the Park family's resurgence. The maid, who had been quietly dusting the bookshelves during the phone call, cautiously approached him. She had overheard enough to sense the tension in the air. "Sir, if I may," she began timidly, "what about the Rose family?" Grandpa Goodwin's eyes narrowed as he turned his gaze towards her. The mention of the Rose family seemed to strike a nerve, and his voice carried a warning tone. "Never mention that name in this house again." Olivia and Dusty slowly walked through the hallways of the Goodwin estate. The air was still thick with the remnants of the intense conversation that had just unfolded between Grandpa Goodwin and Jack. Dusty, with a puzzled expression, glanced at Olivia. "What was that all about? I mean, with Goodwin and your grandfather?" he asked, trying to make sense of the snippets of conversation they had overheard. Olivia's mind was racing, piecing together the puzzle. "It sounds like Grandpa Goodwin has some sort of partnership with Jack," she said thoughtfully, her voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and concern. "They're involved in some shady business deals in New York, and Goodwin doesn't want me to ruin it?" She stopped for a moment, looking out of a large window overlooking the estate's gardens, her reflection mirroring her thoughtful expression. "I need to figure out how to use this to our advantage, to shake up Jack's deals with Goodwin. This could be the key to taking my grandfather down," she mused, her eyes narrowing in determination. Dusty regarded her with a blend of admiration and concern. "But are you sure you want to go head-to-head with your own granddad? It's like diving into a shark tank wearing a meat suit," he said, half jokingly, but visibly worried about the implications. Olivia turned to him, a sly grin spreading across her face. "Oh, I'm more than ready," she said with a twinkle in her eye. "Besides, I've always been good at swimming with sharks." As they approached the sleek black car that awaited them, Olivia suddenly paused, her gaze shifting back towards the Goodwin estate. "I need a moment. I'll be right back," she said, her voice casual. Dusty raised an eyebrow, sensing something amiss. "Everything okay?" he inquired, his protective instincts kicking in. "Just a quick stop at the restroom," Olivia replied with a dismissive wave, turning on her heel and striding back towards the house. Dusty nodded, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. Olivia's eyes darted around, ensuring no one saw her head back to the estate. Her heart pounded with the thrill of her devious plan, every nerve tingling with anticipation. She had one thing on her mind: revenge. As Olivia confidently strode back into the Goodwin estate, her focus entirely on her own dark agenda, she was unaware of the sinister figure lurking in the shadows. Henry watched her with a predatory gaze, a malicious grin creeping across his face. In his hand, he clutched a gun, his fingers caressing the cold metal with a disturbing fondness. Henry couldn't believe his fortune. Olivia, the thorn in his side, was here, within his grasp and without her ever-vigilant bodyguard. "I'm gonna enjoy watching you die," he thought darkly. "No one makes a fool out of me and lives to tell the tale." He stealthily followed her, his movements a sharp contrast to her confident strides. His mind buzzed with twisted thoughts, a cocktail of resentment and perverse excitement. The idea of catching Olivia off guard, making her vulnerable, fed his deluded fantasies of power and control. As Olivia turned a corner, Henry quickened his pace, his grip on the gun tightening. Olivia smirked as she sensed Henry's clumsy attempts at stealth. His attempt at following her was as subtle as a parade. She had wanted to appear completely oblivious to her stalking her, and her trap was working. Unbeknownst to Henry, he was not the hunter but the prey in this twisted game. Olivia's smirk widened as she felt her telekinetic powers stir within her, a familiar and exhilarating sensation. In her mind, she mused, "You know, Henry, sneaking up on a girl at a place like this, that's just asking for trouble." With a sly glance over her shoulder, Olivia decided it was showtime. The gun, as if bewitched, slipped from Henry's grasp, floating eerily in the air. Henry's eyes widened in horror and disbelief as he watched his weapon betray him. The gun turned towards him, and Olivia couldn't help but chuckle at the irony of it all. "What goes around comes around, Henry," she thought to herself. With a flick of her mental prowess, the gun fired, the bullet finding its new home in Henry's foot. Henry's howl of pain was music to her ears. He stumbled backward, losing his balance. In the moment that seemed choreographed by the universe itself, Henry toppled down the mansion's grand staircase, each ornate step ensuring his rapid descent to a fatal end. As he lay motionless at the foot of the stairs, Olivia couldn't help but quip to herself, "Well, that escalated quickly, sweetheart." She emphasized that last word, the same one that Henry had used to belittle her not long ago. She adjusted her dress nonchalantly, her heart rate barely elevated. "One last pest to worry about," she mused. After dealing with Henry, Olivia slumped into her car seat with a sense of accomplishment. As they drove off from the Goodwin estate, Dusty glanced at the rearview mirror. The same car that had been tailing them earlier was still on their tail, its presence like a persistent shadow. "Still got company," Dusty murmured under his breath, but Olivia seemed unfazed. "Don't worry about it," Olivia said, her voice laced with an odd mix of weariness and confidence. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the car lull her into a brief respite. Dusty watched her drift off, marveling at how she could find peace in the midst of chaos. Suddenly, the car jolted, snapping Olivia from her slumber. The car that had been following them earlier had now aggressively cut them off, nearly running them off the road. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest, but her voice was steady as she called up Sven. "Sven, it's Olivia. We need you and Chris here now," she said with urgency. She quickly relayed their location, her words clipped and precise. Dusty managed to bring their car to a stop, narrowly avoiding a crash. The tension in the air was palpable as they sat there waiting. Olivia's eyes darted around, assessing their surroundings, her mind racing. The unexpected ambush had caught them off guard. As soon as Olivia's call came through, Sven and Chris sprang into action. The urgency in Olivia's voice was enough to set off all the alarms. "Sven, we've got a situation," Chris barked, his voice sharp. "Olivia and Dusty, they're in trouble." Sven's fingers flew over his phone, mobilizing teams of operatives with a few rapid texts and calls. "Teams Alpha and Delta, move out," he instructed with a calm authority that bellied the adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Echo Team, stand by for backup." In moments, a fleet of sleek, unmarked cars roared to life, engines growling like beasts awakening from slumber. Each vehicle was packed with operatives, their faces set in grim determination, ready for whatever lay ahead. Sven and Chris took the lead, their vehicles slicing through the city streets. Pandora, in all her stylish elegance, made her way to the door of Olivia's car. Her steps were graceful, yet there was a hint of malice in her eyes that belied her beauty. She reached the car and, without waiting for permission, opened the door, revealing a startled Olivia. "Pandora, what are you doing here?" Olivia's voice was cautious, her eyes scanning for any hidden danger. Pandora's smile was as enigmatic as her presence. "Olivia, darling, why don't you step out and have a little chat with me?" Olivia's eyebrows shot up. "In the middle of nowhere with a car tailing me? I don't think so." Pandora leaned in closer, her voice taking on a persuasive tone. "Come now, Olivia. Don't be difficult. We're all friends here, aren't we?" Olivia snorted. "Friends don't usually chase each other down dark roads, Pandora." Pandora's smile didn't waver. "Oh, you have such a dramatic way of seeing things. I merely wanted to discuss something of mutual interest." Olivia folded her arms, her stance unwavering. I'm listening, but I'm not stepping out of the car. Pandora's tone hardened slightly. It's not every day that I extend an invitation to chat. It would be in your best interest to accept. Olivia leaned back unfazed. My interest lies in safety, and right now this car feels like the safest place. Pandora tilted her head, her gaze scrutinizing Olivia. Pandora looked away, trying to figure out a better approach. Pandora paused, turning back to Olivia with a look that was a mix of mischief and intrigue. Okay, Olivia, I'll let you go, but before you decide to shut yourself in, I have someone I'd like you to meet, a friend of mine. Olivia raised an eyebrow, her mind racing. Someone's pulling Pandora's strings, but who is it, and what do they want with me? She wondered. And who might this friend be? She asked, her tone cautious yet curious. Pandora's smile grew wider. Someone who, like you, understands the art of playing the long game. Someone who appreciates the finer subtleties of power. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. The way Pandora hinted at something more, someone lurking in the shadows of this power play. Was she finally about to meet the mysterious person pulling the strings?